I am making this video about the name the trait argument raised by Ask Yourself. This is my opinion. And since one of the purposes of YouTube is to be able to state your opinion, that is what I will do. I have to mention that for the making and editing of this video I had to use a Polaroid camera and a bucket with a chain, so don't expect impressive visual effects. As you can tell, I'm not even using my voice, I'm using Google Translator's voice. Haha. You can tell how cheap I am. I'm using Paint, bitches. Okay, let's roll. I'll try to explain how this argument works, according to my perception. The premise starts from the notion that despite humans having their own morals, because moral is subjective, we can agree in a moral baseline that we can all agree on. So the proponent of name the trait states that because he or she believes in basic human rights, and there is no characteristic that humans have that would only grant this basic rights to humans only, it is logical to extend those basic rights to other sentient beings, namely animals. And to clarify, those basic rights that we are talking about are as basic as the right to life and the right to not be exploited or abused. So following this logic, if you believe in basic human rights, you should also believe in basic animal rights, unless you are able of naming a trait that would deny this rights to animals. Simplified in this equation. In order to be logically consistent, if you believe in the premise of basic human rights, the other premise must be the same for animals, unless you change the equal sign to unequal. And you only can do that if you name a trait that would allow basic human rights and negate basic animal rights. Now this is usually how it goes when trying to name the trait. If the trait you name is intelligence, social contract, moral agency, and so on, then the question becomes, so if a human would lack that trait, would that justify killing the human just because it lacks the trait? What usually happens next is that they say no, because they are humans. Then name the trait is asked again, so that means that we are back to square one, and then other trait would be named with the same result, repeating the cycle. This usually goes on for minutes, sometimes even hours, until the proponent of name the trait states that you were not able to name the trait, therefore you are being logically inconsistent. So what some people try to do is naming one like being part of a species that is able to do X or has X characteristic. Then name the trait says that you are just appealing to species again. And then naming a characteristic unique to the majority of the beings of that species. So for example, that would be like saying being part of a species that has moral agency. Then the question repeats again, would that justify killing a human if it lacked the trait? What other people try to do is saying that it would be justifiable if the perpetrator or killer is of another species. That would mean that humans are justified to kill any creature as long as this creature is not a human. As you can see, this time they didn't refer to a particular species, just that it has to be a different one. Then the question would be, would that justify aliens killing us for no justifiable reason just because they are not of our species? What this means is that name the trait prevents you from using or even mentioning the words human, animals, group, species, or any use of this words in any way. To comprehend why name the trait is so well designed, let's look at this example. There is one random human, another random human, and a cow. These three can have all the different characteristics you want. Now, what is the trait that would always link the two humans and not the cow? Could it be that they are living creatures? No, because the cow is also a living creature. This would link the three of them. Could it be the possibility of having moral agency? No. Because this time this human is not capable of having moral agency, and it would only link this human to the cow. So again, what is the only trait that would be common for any and all humans with another human and would never be in common with any animal? The answer is that they are human. This links any human with other human, and not the animal, regardless of other traits. But as you remember, name the trait is designed to negate the species characteristic, and therefore it negates the only trait that every human shares with only themselves. So now it doesn't matter what trait you name. Let's try with trait X. Trait X is able to distinguish between some of the majority of humans and some of the majority of animals, but not all. Therefore trait X is incapable of differentiating between humans and animals. You can even stack a bunch of traits, the conclusion remains the same. The only way to circumvent this is by saying things like only humans have souls, or God created animals for our consumption. But then it would no longer be an argument and it wouldn't be acceptable in a debate. I also have to mention that the proponent of name the trait will probably insist on naming one trait at a time. And this is where most people fail at. So here is my conclusion: you can only be logically consistent when facing name the trait in three ways. The first one is negating morals and ethics, and stating that moral baselines are unnecessary, which would make you either a sociopath or a cold person, at least by normal standards. The second one is acknowledging basic human rights as well as basic animal rights, since there is no trait that separates them regarding basic rights. And the third one is accepting the fact that if a sentient being lacks the trait, regardless of species, it would be morally justifiable to kill them. This is how I think most people can get through name the trait. This can be an example. He believes that the trait is moral agency. If an animal lacks moral agency, it is morally justifiable to kill that animal, and that holds true for a human as well. Now all that this person has to say is that even if killing a human without moral agency is justifiable, he wouldn't do it because there are laws preventing that, and he cannot change those laws. Therefore, it would be unwise for him to go killing these humans. The fact that it is morally justifiable doesn't mean that he is obligated to do so, therefore he is being logically consistent. Still, the proponent of the name the trait can always state that the trait he named seems arbitrary, and he is only naming the trait in order to justify killing animals. And if that were true, it would make the person a hypocrite. On the other hand, if he really believes that, and he is not naming the trait only to justify killing animals, then it would make him a crazy person by normal standards, because if he were about to lose his moral agency, then he would have to accept that it is morally justifiable to kill him. So those are the three ways to be logically consistent when facing name the trait. I hope you found this video informative or at least interesting in some way, and again, this is my opinion and perception of it, so feel free to comment if you agree or disagree. Farewell, my flamboyant viewers.